G'day super coaches and welcome back for yet another episode. In this video I'll be discussing 5 of the best 0% ownership players that you can pick in the 2021 season. 4 out of 5 of them are midfielders and I have one defender in there that consistently gets overlooked every year. We'll start off with my number 1 pick this year and that is Jed Anderson from North Melbourne. There is no bias in this pick as I am a North Melbourne fan. I see genuine upside with Anderson this year as long as he keeps his body right. Now he's 562,300 and he finished the 2020 season averaging 105, which is his biggest average over his career. And it's also a 20-point increase from the previous year. So he was 15th in tackles per game, averaging 5, and he was 33rd in disposals per game, averaging 21, with 15 of them being effective. So he's an inside midfielder and he's becoming one of the top midfielders at North Melbourne currently, behind Ben Cunnington and the likes of Jai Simpkin and LDU. So he's had a massive pre-season, but he did have a little calf injury a few days ago in a practice match at Arden Street, so that's something we should just follow up on. I'm not too sure the seriousness of it, but I will keep an eye on that over the upcoming days. Something we need to keep note about with Anderson is that in rounds 1 and 2 he had 2 sub-100 scores and his centre bounce attendance percentage was only 25% in round 1 and 33% in round 2, and that was mainly due to Cunnington, where Cunnington had a 95% and an 83% respectively. And then of course, as we know, Cunnington missed the majority of the season and that's when Anderson stood up and he started posting some really big scores and his centre bounce attendance rate skyrocketed to around 70%. So that's a big difference from 30% from rounds 1 and 2. If we look at some of his big scores, they came mainly in the latter half of the season. So he's had some scores of 116, 144, 100, and then he had a 48 in round 11. But if we exclude the 48, because he was injured in that game, I believe, yes, he had a scratch eye in quarter 3 and did not return. So we can eliminate that score, I think. So we followed up the week after with 143, 140, then an 81, 108, 89, and then a massive 174 in the final round against the Eagles when he had 30 disposals and 1 goal. So that did elevate his average to the round 105 with that big score, but he was injured with that 48 as well, so it kind of evened itself out. But we can see here he's posted 3 scores of 140 plus. Now that's pretty big, and over the last 10 weeks he would have averaged close to 115 or something like that, which would make him a top 10 midfielder. One thing we need to keep noting that he's only scored a handful of hundreds over his short career. He's always been injured as well, so he's only just got his body right. But with his contested ball winning ability and his desire to tackle and hunt, he does elevate his scoring with those good attributes that he does have. It'll be interesting to see what he averages this year, because he did average 80 in 2018 and then jumped up to 86 and then 105 in 2020. Can he get to 110? I think there's a real possibility he can, but I'm not too sure how consistently his scores are going to be and whether he'll make the park every week. He's never played a full season, so that's something that I do not like, but his upside is really good. My number 2 pick for 0% ownership players is Tomatoni Liberatore. Yes, he averaged 106 in 2020. He comes in at 570,000. Quite expensive for Libba, and he was kind of wasn't really spoken about in relation to Supercoach last year, where McRae and Bailey Smith and Bontempelli took all the spotlight from him. But he was really good. He finished the season 8th in contested possessions per game, averaging 11.4, and 18th in score involvements with 5.12. So that's a good statistic, both of them. But the main one here is he had 80% time on ground, which is fantastic. The negatives with Libba is there's too many good midfielders at the Dogs, with the likes of the names I mentioned just before, and his injury history as well. He also goes at under 70% disposal efficiency, which does hurt his scores, but he does win a lot of contested balls, so that makes sense. He scored 196 in the last round as well, so that really elevated his scoring to 106. So he's probably around the 102 to 103 mark possibly. But he seems to score well even when he rotates forward. He spends most of the time as an inside midfielder, but he does play around the half forward flank and then drifts into stoppages and things like that. So he seems to score alright. And now with Treloar injured, you'd think that Dunkley will get his inside midfield opportunity, but Libba will also stay an inside midfielder as well. So He has averaged 107 and 110 in previous years, 6 or 7 years ago, mind you, but he has showed us before that he does have pretty high scoring abilities. So he comes in as my number 2 pick for this season as a 0% ownership player. My number 3 pick is from the Gold Coast Suns, who had a breakout season in 2020. I actually had this player probably 3 to 4 years ago in hoping that he would break out, but he never did. His name is Touk Miller. He's also around 570,000 because he averaged around the same as Jed Anderson and Tommy Liberatore at 106. So a couple of key statistics for him was that he was 9th in tackles per game and he was 12th in stoppage clearances per game in the entire competition. So he's always been a good tackler because he used to tag a bit as well, so he can eliminate his opponent's influence on the game, but he can also win the pill himself and do some damage. A few negatives here is he never averaged over 90 until 2020. Now, with all these players getting career high averages in 2020, it's hard to say if he can back it up to 106 plus next year, but had a great preseason again. He looks fully fit. He's a key part of that Gold Coast Suns midfield, so it's leaning in the direction that he will, if not increase his average, or still stay around that 106. What also is interesting that in 2019, he had some really good numbers in terms of statistics with disposals and tackles and things like that, but they just didn't translate to good Supercoach scores. Although he averaged around 88, he was always really consistent and didn't fluctuate very much. He was always kind of in that 90 region every week. So I'm not too sure why it didn't translate to Supercoach, because his statistics really haven't changed that much in 2020 at all. Maybe it was the short quarters, I don't know. We'll have to see what happens. And of course, as the Gold Coast Suns improve, and with Matty Rowell back, it should probably benefit Miller. So as soon as they improve, his scores will improve and they'll follow suit as well. Basically, in 2020, he was very consistent. He had 11 out of 17 scores over 100, and he only dropped under 80 once. And that was when he scored 65 in round 11 against Essendon. But if we look at his scores here, he started off the season pretty well with 104, 98, 126, and 111. When he really started to pick up was a few weeks later when he scored 142, 102, 140, and then he kind of dropped back to that 80 mark. But he then finished off the season with 5 out of 700s as well. So that is consistency at its finest, and that's what you want in a Supercoach player. My 4th player on my list is from the Sydney Swans, defender Dane Rampe. 492,000. He finished the year averaging 92, which is probably where he is all the time lately. He was 17th in 1%ers for the year and 5th in rebound 50s per game. So, we think that Lloyd would have taken the majority of them, probably still did. Rampe does get a lot of rebound 50s, but the biggest positive with Rampe is 94% time on ground. Never has a rest. That just increases the likelihood of him scoring points, really. That's a really good statistic to have. A negative with Rampe is his scores fluctuate a lot from 140s down to 65s, and it's annoying. So we can see in 2020 he's had scores of 32, a 44, a 69 and a 65, and then his highs were 140, 149, 120 and 139. I'm not sure I really want that consistency in my backline. I'm probably better off with the safer option. In 2019 he averaged 97 and he had a really good run towards the end of the year there, went past starting from round 8 when he scored 91, 81, and then he had 600s in a row, and then 390s and then 200s. That is consistency, and he only had the one score below 70 there. So, and that was a 63 in round 6. So he probably can average around 95 again, somewhere like that. And he's probably a good pick if you're looking for a point of difference players. But as someone mentioned, just because a player is low ownership doesn't mean that you should pick them, which I agree with. But if they're low ownership players and they're going to average the same as a premium defender who has high ownership, then why not? I just don't understand. So his injury history as well is pretty good. He was injured last year and he missed 6 games, but prior to that he'd only missed 1 game in 2019, played all of 2018, missed 7 in 2017, and then he had 3 full seasons in a row. So his injury history, pretty good. He is getting on now. He's probably around 29 years of age, so maybe he's past that prime of his 97 Supercoach average, so we might see a decline with him this year, especially with all the young guns coming through there down the back line in Sydney. But he's still one of the best lockdown defenders in the competition. There's no denying that. I can pencil him in for somewhere between 85 to 100, so there's a possibility for him to reach 100, but is probably realistically somewhere around the 90 mark. He's someone to watch closely throughout the year, and when his price really drops, that's when you jump on. My fifth and final player of this video is Will Setterfield from the Carlton Football Club, an inside midfielder who had his best year in 2020, averaging 90 points. A couple key statistics for him was he was 11th in tackles per game, not bad, and he had a 78% time on ground. Pretty good. The only problem with him is he doesn't win enough of the ball. He only averaged the 15 disposals last year, but 15 disposals, an average of 90. That's pretty good. If he can increase his output to somewhere around 20 plus, you should see his average lift to 105, if not even further. He's only played the 36 games in his career as well. Is this year a little too early on him? Maybe we're 2 years away from actually seeing the best of Setterfield. He also goes at 62% disposal efficiency, which is quite low, but he is an inside midfielder, so I'll leave him off a little bit there, but he does need to improve his ball use. A couple positive is he has the inside midfielder role locked and loaded at Carlton, alongside Cripps, probably Williams, Walsh, Curnow. We can pencil in Setterfield getting bulk midfield minutes this year and for the upcoming years as well. He also averaged 105 in the last 10 games of 2020, excluding that score of 50. I know we can't really be excluding scores, but it's a good indication of what he's probably capable of and where he's heading in his Supercoach career, so I kind of like that. He had 600s in a row and a low of 82. Consistent, and he also posted the biggies, just what we're looking for. He'd never scored a ton prior to 2020, so he's only got the 6 in his career, but should be an upward trend here. We should see him getting probably 10 plus in 2021. You can probably see him averaging 105, somewhere like that, if we're lucky. Alrighty, and that's it guys. Thanks again for watching the video. They're my top 5 players with 0% ownership that we should be having a look at. Let us know in the comments if you have the balls to pick one of them. If not, tell me why. If so, also tell me why. I don't think I'll start with any of these players, but if I were, it would probably be Jed Anderson out of all of them. But Touk Miller, I'm coming around to Touk Miller. I'll see how he goes throughout the preseason games. He might get lucky. So, we'll find out. Alright. Thanks guys. Thanks for watching as always. We'll see you in the comments. Cheers.